as mentioned earlier, we're going to try to dwell a bit deeper into the discussion around blended mobility with our first panel. In particular, this panel will try to address one crucial question, which is why blended mobility needs quality. So, in order to do so, I would like to welcome here our moderator for this discussion. His name is Dagmar Pruvan, and he's policy advisor at NVAO, and he will be leading this discussion. He will introduce the speakers and the topic of the session. So, please welcome Dagmar.
Thank you, and almost noon, so everybody will be hungry at this time, so let's be efficient, and that's always problematic from my side. So they set me 5 minutes, 6 minutes, be very strict on it, so I'll do what I can. But I am Dagmar Provijn, I'm Senior Policy Advisor of the NVAO, the Accreditation Organization of the Netherlands, Flanders, as mentioned before, but also Luxembourg. So we are extending, we are making a European Union for ourselves, and so start with the 3 essential parts from history. I'm not alone today, I'm not the important one, so we have gathered a panel of experts and bringing in different perspectives on what quality for student blended mobility can be and how essential it is. But these perspectives were also incorporated in the project, so it's important that we have these perspectives here as well today. I have a little bit of a paper with me to make the introductions, because I know the people by name now, but I even had to ask how to pronounce the name, so yeah. First of all, we have Fanny Lacroix-Desmazes. Fanny Lacroix is a policy officer in the Erasmus Plus team of the Higher Education Unit of the Director General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. So that's from the in fact, funding side, the policy side. So welcome and thanks for being here. Secondly, we have Lia Lauri, who is sitting there forward from my side, has been the head of higher education at the Estonian Quality Agency for Education, HAKA. She has been a very important voice from the quality assurance side in the project, so with very good ideas what they have been implementing at HAKA. She has taken part in many international projects and groups, such as coordinating Estonia's national team of Bologna experts and contributing to ENQA's working group on quality assurance and e-learning. So thank you for your voice and thanks for being here. You had to travel quite far. So we asked many possible people who are close to Brussels, but Lia came from further away. Then we have Božidar Grigic. I hope it's pronounced almost. Thank you very much. Is the head of higher education unit at the Slovene National Agency for Erasmus+. So again, funder side, agency side, but a very important voice, and he even had a good suggestion, so it's very good he's here for the moment. And then we have Roberto Napoli. Yeah, that's from the institutional side. Also, of course, those who have to implement and have to create things at the higher education institutions, but also at alliances. So we have ECU consortium here. That's very important, and he was already active at the School of Innovation at the University of Trento. So the Italian voice, European voice, and also, of course, the institutional voice. So thanks for being here. Another person who traveled here just to be here with us today, so very important. And then, last but not least, the student voice, which is always the last one in the panel mentioned, but of course very important. Simone Leppore. Okay. He's the president of the Erasmus Student Network. He holds a binational Bachelor in Political Science and International Relations and a Master's in International Development and Public Policy. So thank you for being here. You will all receive some questions later on, but I have to make an introduction first. And that's the most difficult part because, of course, you've been working on a project and it all seems very evident what you're doing because it's about student-blended mobility and it's about the quality of student-blended mobility. Because you can do all kinds of actions. You can have mobility in route and then you can have student-blended mobility and you can have COIL. But the most important thing is what does it serve? What does it mean to have these kinds of mobility? Why do students need mobility? So in the end, we always have to think about what's qualitative about being abroad, being in interaction with people from other countries, from other institutions. And that's maybe the heart of what the quality can be. So what is the meaningfulness of this mobility? And that is that we have international and intercultural learning, that it is incorporated in the programs and that people can truly be engaged in this learning process with intercultural but also international. So, and one of these new factors, and we have to admit it, maybe it's quite caused by the corona, by the COVID crisis, is that we had the mobility and then at once everything became very difficult. And so one of the means to have a solution to this kind of problem that was caused at that time is that we have this blended mobility, student-blended mobility in which the part of being abroad, of being together at other locations becomes smaller and that you can also have a digital part on it. But then we saw, of course, the digital part was not really truly developed. It's not developed as the other part, and so that's a bit problematic because if you say it has to be a truly international and intercultural learning experience, then one part of it already falls out. So it takes hours, it takes efforts, but it's not meaningful in the learning process. And if you want qualitative student-blended mobility, it should in fact have a meaning as well. It should be part of this whole experience. So that's it. So it fits into something that is evolving very quickly, and that's the higher education areas itself. So things are becoming more complex, and what we want is that we more flexible, more inclusive, more digital parts in it. But each of these, of course, have their own requirements and need some efforts to be done to be qualitative. So it's a promising part, so the SBM can be promising, but of course, when it's promising, how can it be promising in a qualitative way? How can we make sure that for the funding parties, for the institutional, for the students, for also quality assurance agencies, that we get quality in the system? So what we will do is ask some questions to this panel, and you will see that they're very well prepared, that we already talked about it, because some of them even prepared slides, and if we hadn't told them the questions, that would be very magical if they could already respond to it and have slides that answer my questions. But if we put it, you will see these are quite extensive, but I will put some smaller questions that are behind it and that you will find through what is said. How can we move from quantitative expansion, so the SBM quite successful, so we have an example in the room of CVs, 250 or even more BIPs, that's huge. So it all developed very quickly, and so they will have lots of considerations on what it can be, but how can you make it a strategic purpose? How can you have just a quantity of things and answers to a crisis that was happening to something that is strategically important if we look at mobility and internationalization for students? How to strengthen the online component, as already said, to make quality assurance effective, so proportionate, practical, and ESG aligned. That is also an important aspect. So you have to quality assure it, but make sure that it's not coming too heavy. What support to institutions need for national agencies and the Commission? So represented here. What design features make blended mobility truly engaging for students? That's also, because that's also the part that is important. And how can the next Erasmus Plus program balance innovation with simplicity. That's something the EU often struggles with, so let's be honest about it. So now I made the introductions. Welcome all of you, welcome the audience in the virtual zone. So thank you for being here, for listening to us. Because that's the most important thing. Today some results are presented, a project is finished. We have to thank all the members who contributed to it. But I really want to say a special thank to Angeliki, who was so patient, who was always there, and who really made things happen when they had to happen. So Angeliki, thumbs up, very well done. So now we can go to the question round. That's because our panel is here. That's why you're all here. But as said, it is important that even if we have the results today, that the discussion continues afterwards, that good practices still are shared. That's also why we have the community of experts. So make it happen. So the question to all of you, go to this community, post things if you have new ideas, new experiences, very important if this all ends up on the LinkedIn page. So, now I'm going to my questions, if I can find them. Fanny, you're the first one. I mentioned you first, so you're also the first one with the question. HIBLend highlights that blended mobility is expanding, but often driven by quantitative targets rather than strategic purpose. From the Commission's perspective, how should blended mobility be positioned in the future, recognizing its strategic value as a complementary mobility format, a complementary one? It's not that it has to replace things, but it's a complementary one. Now I lost my line. Yeah. The importance of meaningful and learning outcome aligns short-term experience and the need to strengthen the quality of the online component as outlined in the EC's guidelines, while ensuring it does not replace or dilute traditional long-term mobility. The floor is yours.
Okay. Does it work? Yeah, okay. So first, thank you for inviting me to this conference, and thank you to ACA for having organized this event and led this project, because I think it comes really at the right moment when we are collecting some findings about what has worked well and what should be improved in the next programming period. So, as you know, blended mobility was a novelty introduced under this in 2021, so under this current program, but it was already in the pipeline even before the COVID pandemic. And so COVID gave it a strong boost, even if at that time it was more purely virtual mobility than blended mobilities, and it was not foreseen like that. When we launched the program, we did not want to be too prescriptive about how the virtual component should look like. But we made it clear from the outstart that blended mobility should not replace long-term student mobility. It should complement it. It was rather conceived as a stepping stone for those who face barriers to go on long-term mobility or who were hesitating to go on long-term mobilities. The objective was to let them test this kind of mobility format, and if it is appreciated, we think they would be convinced to go for a long-term mobility. Pure short-term mobility, so physical short-term mobility, were not allowed in Erasmus Plus higher education, and therefore we have always insisted on the fact that the virtual component is compulsory. Early 2025, we decided to launch a survey among NAs to collect some good practices about the virtual component, as we had the feeling that some actors needed a bit more guidance about what should be considered a good virtual component. And here I would like to thank Lorenzo, because he was our trainee at that time, and with Fava, my colleague, they organized, they designed this survey, they collected the feedback of the NAs, and thanks to all of you that participated in this survey. And so we published some guidelines during the summer period. Maybe I will provide you the link so you can post it also on your website. So the result was for a good virtual component to be successful, we need first a clear structure with a well-defined program, content with a clear schedule, clear deadline, well-defined expected learning outcome. The evaluation criteria should be known in advance and distinguish what will be assessed as group work or individual work. In terms of implementation, the time gap between the virtual components and the physical part should be limited as much as possible. It's also a good practice to provide a handbook for the virtual component, or to provide also asynchronous content to allow students to process learning material at their own pace. And it is also crucial to involve the professor of the partner institutions. So this was, yes, and we also collected some good practices in terms of use of some digital interactive tools, and also about how to enhance the participation of students through, for example, a buddy system, organization of simulation game, negotiation game, escape room, things like that. So a bit more creative, you know, so we should not replicate online what we could do physically. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, as said, the work on qualitative SBM is going on at different levels, different groups, so thank you very much for sharing this. It's very important that everybody shares, continues to share, and so that we get an integration of different perspectives on what this qualitative evolution of SBM could be. So that's a very good point, and that's why it also should be mentioned on this LinkedIn page. But we'll go into the quality assurance side, so that's what we think of when we say quality of SBM. Then what about quality assurance? What about this perspective of external quality assurance? What alignment with the European standards and guidelines, which are rewritten in a sense, which will not be rewritten that hard. But of course, it also is something important. And HIBLend shows that institutions struggle most with designing high quality online components. So that's the difficult part, as said before. So how can we work on it? But from an external QA perspective, what would help institutions build robust internal QA systems for student-blended mobility that remain, and that's the important part, that remain proportionate, that remain realistic and ESG aligned. But that also address the main struggles of SBM, of course. Leah? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very, very good question. The whole world is there included. So I'm from the Estonian Quality Agency for Education, and we have been dealing with the quality of digital education quite a long time already, more than a decade, I would say. So, but we were not so much familiar, or I wasn't, with these blended learning questions about the quality. So it was good to be familiarized myself during this, being involved a little bit with this project. So thank you for that. But if I may start with the institutional or alliances perspective. So first of all, I think the key question is how to incorporate the blended mobility into the broader internationalization, or why not online learning strategies of institutions or alliances? So this is one struggle, and in practice it may mean that it can be incorporated into the existing quality assurance framework, or it can be developed a strategy that are strategically and specifically addressing the dynamics of blended learning. So it's hard to say which is the better way to go, but it's the quality agency who is discussing these things probably. And I really liked, of course, the quality criteria that you developed and interpreted during this project about the aligning the criteria with ESG. So for the quality agency side, we know that the development and innovation is best supported by the enhancement-led quality assurance. So we see our role in helping defining these quality criteria further. For instance, the alignment of ESG might need more discussions at the state level. For instance, the student-centered learning may mean several things in course of digital learning. So it's not so one-fold. So we can, as a quality agency, we can provide that platform for discussing, for agreeing on the quality criteria, both online learning and mobility. So we map the existing practices together, and we do share good practices. I think this is the best way the quality agency can do supporting these activities. And here you see that the framework of quality criteria for online and blended learning that was developed collaboratively already more than a decade ago. Of course, it hasn't remained the same. We still have the working group under our roof that is keeping these quality criteria up to date, which is really important because AI wasn't there 10 years back. So it is important to keep the quality criteria relevant, up to date, and to cover all the life cycle of digitally enhanced teaching and learning, meaning from the planning to the implementation to the monitoring of the online component. I'm talking here mostly about the online component because this is what we have been dealing with. And one good thing about this collaborative approach has been that now the universities who even don't apply for the quality label, they use these criteria for their internal quality assurance processes. So this is something that is important. For instance, the attestation of academic staff, when they have to map their digital competencies, they are using these criteria. And one good thing that we, or practice that we discovered just now was about the one university who is belonging to the University Alliance. They do analyze all the online components of the beforehand. They are given to the mobility. Based on the same quality criteria, the teachers are given feedback and they are improved even before the mobility. So this is kind of good approach that I think that has worked out quite well. It would be, of course, nice to try it more broader context, university alliances perhaps, whether these criteria would apply also in this regard. But perhaps one thing to highlight here also that this creation and maintaining of good, high quality, good online components, this requires quite a lot of effort, time and resources. So it is really something that needs to be paid attention to. Solid infrastructure, teacher training and support, like network for instructional designers, etc. Yeah.
I think it's important to see, and also shown on the slide, of course, and not mentioned before, but if we look at the phases as well that were mentioned in the framework, what is always behind, if we talk about quality assurance, is of course the holy trinity of quality assurance. What are your aims? How do you implement them? And how do you show that what you aim for is achieved? And so that's also, if you look at the implementation, there's the pre-implementation, and that's why it's also important to think strategically about why are we doing this SBM, but because as you say, it's quite an effort. It takes a lot of time, and so we continue to go to the next one, because of course to Božidar, I wanted to ask, well, the BIPs are very prominent in the field of SBM, but I'm not allowed to mention BIPs too much because we have to talk about SBM. So, but okay, the BIPs are there, they are very present, but if you look at the workload, it's quite comparable to long-term mobility. So it's not that you say, well, it's only a short mobility, and so it will only take short amount of time. That's not true. It takes a lot of time. So what improvements in national agency support tools or guidance could most relieve administrative burden while still safeguarding and promoting quality? Božidar, the floor is yours. You said it's a difficult question and that you will also give a difficult answer, so we are very...
It's not the easiest to answer, and I'll explain why. First, because I'm not sure if there should be less workload, just because it's a different type of activity. What I mean is that, you know, mobility participants need just as much support for the short blended mobility as for the long-term mobility, especially if we want the mobility to have the best possible impact out of it, and to also, if we are understanding short blended mobility as an alternative option to include students that cannot go on a long-term mobility, even though it was previously mentioned by Fanny that that was not the initial idea when introducing blended intensive programs or short blended mobilities to the program of Erasmus+, it is the consequences that it became also an inclusion tool in the internationalization processes. So, you know, no matter what kind or what type of the activity it is a mobility, and students need the specific support. So they need administrative support to prepare all the documentation that they need. They need logistical and organizational support to arrange the traveling, also to arrange to prepare for the online parts of the activity. They need cultural preparation to what to expect from the intercultural interactions during the activity. And of course, they also need educational and professional support. So basically, they need all of these aspects, no matter whether it is a long-term mobility or a short blended mobility. Also, during the mobility, of course, they need the monitoring or checkings, and after the mobility, they need to go through the recognition process, so support in that terms, and reintegration, which I guess in this sense, this should be easier for those who attend short-term blended mobility than for those who come from after the long-term mobility. Anyways, I would still maybe expect that there are more participants going to the same blended intensive programs from the same institutions. These steps can be then addressed together simultaneously for the whole group. So in that sense, it should lessen the burden, or at least administrative burden for the institutions. And also looking from the funding agency perspective, the organizational support is the same for long-term mobilities as it is for the short blended mobilities. However, also to answer the question how we at the national agency are supporting our beneficiaries in the implementation of short blended mobilities and BIPs, we do provide quite a few workshops at national events addressing the challenges of the implementations. We also share with them the good case practices. We are also part of the TCA activity, so training with 3 other national agencies from Croatia, Serbia, and Romania, where each year we organize this training for implementation of blended intensive programs with external experts. We also took another initiative where we promote the possible combination of financing these type of activities through different mechanisms. So not only through Erasmus+, but also with the CIPOS program, which is a Central and Eastern European program for training and mobility, where already institutions are organizing, for example, summer schools or winter schools, and we kind of offer them a training how they can translate or transform those activities into blended intensive programs in enriching with the virtual components. So basically, they have the content, how they can translate it in an easier way to also then create these new types of activities.
Thank you, Božidar. I think it's a good point. Quality takes time, so you cannot make the burden too low, because otherwise you can't create qualitative BIPs or other student-blended mobility. I think it's a good point, but then, of course, you have to realize, is it something that can be run for the long term? Because for one small BIP, it can be a burden at the end. Now we will go to the institutional side. So I'm going to Roberto. ECU has experimented a lot with blended intensive format, and the uptake was quite low at the start, but it has been growing and it has become too popular, as he said, so they really need selection of students to participate in the BIPs. So from very low to very popular. Based on this journey, which pedagogical and organizational design features have proven most effective in making your blended mobility formats truly attractive and impactful for students? So what have you done to make it so popular?
Okay, thank you very much for having me here and for the question. Some background information before. ECIU is a European consortium of innovative universities, of which my university, University of Trento, is a proud member. I work for the School of Innovation within the University of Trento. And the main idea is to make the difference of the ECIU network is to make the difference through challenges or challenge-based learning. So what do we intend with challenges? We call it, something where we have an institution, an external institution, which is very important to add many features that I will describe later, which brings in a challenge, a real problem that they face in the market or in their daily life. Then, of course, we have students. We group them into teams. And we accompany them through a path which leads to the final project, which needs to be useful to the institution to solve the challenge. So by and large, this is a challenge. Why is this relevant here? Because we have been organizing challenges within this network in the format of the BIP since 2021. So in the next slide, you can see that we started with low numbers of students enrolled in this kind of BIPs, so in our challenges. In the first 3 years, from 21 to 23, we didn't reach the minimum number for these BIPs to be financed, so it was 15 European students involved. So we made some thoughts about how to make some changes, because we had already a very long experience in designing challenges, okay, at the School of Innovation. We have been doing this since 2015, so we have more than 10 years experience. So we changed the format a little bit. We had the online part before the in-presence part. Then we postponed it. Then we made both. We worked on the topics. We worked on the class size and everything. But in the first time, nothing seemed to work. And then all of a sudden, I would say, we received 109 applications. It was in 2024. And in the next semesters and years, we made some reverse engineering about what was working really to have this success. And I put here a list of things that I believe are very important when you organize a challenge. First of all, the external stakeholder is not obvious because not always you have an external stakeholders which comes to class and interacts regularly with your students. But this is necessary if you don't want to replicate just another project or course that students know very well. Okay, so in order to be attractive, you need also to advertise the external stakeholders as a plus of your blended intensive project. Second, and perhaps even most important, you need to have experienced and motivated mentors. Typically professors of your university who take the burden of organizing the content, interacting regularly with students even before they come to Trento in our case. In a sense, they need to have the internal incentive to have this thing happen in a proper way. Okay, maybe in many cases the challenge itself is connected with their research activities, and this works very well. I see here that in my list, just by chance, many of those points match perfectly with the ones which were mentioned before by our colleagues, which means probably that theory matches very well with practice in this case, because okay, promotion, dedicated space at the School of Innovation. The students have a space where they can work and organize their own agenda during the week in presence in Trento. We organize company visits, so the external stakeholder, the company typically invites the students, which generates a lot of motivation to work with them and for them. And it's fantastic to hear students to speak about the company in terms of we should do so and we should act like this, so they are very involved. This is allowed, of course, by the presence, by the personal interaction of people. So in our case, maybe the best solution is to have this motivating part in the beginning of the experience. But of course, there are also disadvantages, because then the last part will be done online, so the final celebration and everything, you cannot do it in person. We can discuss it anyway. What we didn't find too crucial, which didn't make much difference in terms of student participation, is the topic. So we changed the topic, we changed discipline, we changed area, but still we started to have a very high number of applications and then students in class. So topic is definitely, at least in our experience, not one of the success factors.
Thank you very much for sharing. I like the points a lot with the organization, so the support for the mentors, keep them motivated, but also have this very clear administrative responsibility. And I think it's for everybody. The more clearer the responsibility for everybody, the better it is. And that shows that you have to go to in front of the design and know how strategically people can have a position in the whole system of SBM, of the student blended mobility. But now we go to the student perspective, which is also very important, of course, because they're the one who experience it all, but who can also suffer from it if things are not going very well. So that's also happening, of course. So students consistently report barriers in online engagement, recognition inconsistencies, and uneven support. From your perspective, Simone, that's very important, because I know you have to tell a lot about it. Which student-centered quality conditions should every SBM initiative guarantee from day one, both online and during the mobility phase?
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for Aka to the invitation. I will probably not say anything that is really far away from what has been said already, but I think it's important to do some remark. And I would actually also start by also replying to the question, which is the title of the panel, which is why blended mobility needs quality, especially from the student side. And at the Erasmus Student Network, we think that quality is essential to have a mobility or an experience that is reaching its full potential. Not having a quality mobility means to lose part of the potential that those initiatives has. There are many factors which were also mentioned before and during this panel about what quality means and how we can reach quality. And for sure, something that for us is something that we value a lot is the integration of blended mobility within the wider internationalization strategy of the university. It is important to consider such mobility as really part of the international opportunity that students has. And this is also important to strategically plan. And which lead me also to the second point. It is important to plan specifically how this program is going to work, especially to create connection between the online and the physical part. A lot of times still students noted that they have challenges in understanding the purposes of the online and the physical part and how both of them connected. And this can be achieved by having a clear and strategic approach to its implementation, and as you were mentioning the question, since really day zero. Something which is also important is for students to have those information in advance. They are still going to have a physical mobility, so we really need to support students throughout all the phases of their mobilities, as we do for the long-term mobilities, so before, during, and after. And this also facilitates, as many of the students may be attending for the first time an international opportunity, may be traveling for the first time. Now blended mobility is especially an instrument for inclusion and an instrument that gives for many students a first point of entrance into the Erasmus Plus program. But also something that is really crucial is the recognition aspect. A lot of time, unfortunately, especially the virtual component of this type of mobility is not recognized as the physical part, and this unfortunately also results in a lack of engagement of the students when it comes to this component, since they also don't perceive it as a reward for the work they are doing in the virtual component, and this also can create differences in how these two parts are complemented and evaluated. Also, something which is really important is the support that is given during the mobility phase, as shorter mobilities sometimes may even have more challenges than long-term mobilities. This is, for example, when it comes to accommodation. We know that most of the time it's already difficult for many students to find affordable and quality accommodation when they go for 6 months and 1 year. Imagine when we think about going to another country for 10 days or even less sometimes, and students most of the time may be obliged maybe to have hotel accommodation, which are more expensive, and also the fact that they're going to a shorter period make also more difficult their integration to the local community. For us, we strongly support the idea that the Erasmus Plus program, including blended mobility, is a crucial, also as a main goal, apart from, of course, the formal learning outcome, as well as a part about social cohesion, about integration and getting to know the local community. And this is also where we need the support of the higher education institutions to try to make, during those shorter period, the most out of it, and to make sure that they also can experience the local community. Something that, in the sense that we found really interesting is also the use of blended intensive programs as a support for the pre and after departure for students, especially when they're coming back. This can be used as a tool of reintegration, as a tool of sometimes when we have sickness from the Erasmus Plus mobilities, we can still actually, we could still create connection and continue those connection through blended mobilities. And something else that is important is also how we use this mobility format. This has a strong value, for example, to pursue global citizenship, active participation, which is one of the priority of the Erasmus Plus program, and that indeed could be tackled during the online phase of blended intensive program. Something that is also really important as well, and I think I'm also finishing my time, is of course involving student and student representative when it comes to quality assurance and all the quality assurance processes, and also raising awareness about blended mobility, because unfortunately, and this also impact both the quality but also the participation to those opportunities. According to our data, for example, we disseminated in 2024 a survey that reached more than 23,000 students. Just 8.8% of the respondents were aware of blended intensive program. So I think it's important also to move forward this direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simone. I'm not sure, but I thought you were speaking faster at the end because you have to say so much, so that was very good. But people were still nodding, so some of them really catched what you were saying. And so it's very good because it shows that to have this student-blended mobility is, in fact, if you want it true qualitative, it touches on every aspect of external quality assurance, internal quality assurance, and it needs all the elements that are for a full-fledged program present as well. So it's the student learning environment has to be top-notch, and it has to be aligned with what the real goals of the BIP are. So of course it's complex and the quality will need time. So thank you very much for all these perspectives and showing how complex it is, and that of course we have quite an extensive framework, and that's because the problems or the things that have to be solved to have qualitative BIPs or student blended mobility, of course, are extensive as well. So thank you very much for all these perspectives on it. I have some further questions, but I will first aim to Leah and Roberto. So how, if we say that all these aspects of quality assurance are present in the creation of student blended mobility and qualitative student blended mobility, so how can QA systems support the development of it? So rather than constrain pedagogical innovation in blended formats. I do not know who wants to start.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. Again, a very good one. How can we support the internal quality assurance systems of the higher education institutions as the quality agencies? And I again have to repeat myself that we really believe that this collaboration with the higher education institutions is a key in defining the quality criteria for online learning, including or the mobility. And of course, we also need to keep an eye on this quality assurance framework at the European level. European standards and guidelines, of course, needs to be taken into account, and also the world outside the higher education institutions, the employers and also students' needs to be taken into account. So we believe that we are the players between the quality assurance frameworks in the European level, at the state level, and also we can bring the players at the state level, the universities, to bring them together to discuss these quality criteria that needs to be in place. And we strongly believe that if the quality criteria have been agreed mutually, it will help the internal quality assurance systems in the universities. So this seems to be key, and also the network of instructional designers, in our case, who have developed this quality criteria, the framework, they are the ones who will go back to their institutions as agents of these quality criteria. They know what does this mean, and they are building the guidelines together with us to interpret the guidelines. So we see ourselves as an active part in bringing different players together. That would be the short answer.
Thank you very much. Well, I have a specific point which I consider very important. So quality assurance should allow enough degrees of freedom to the ones who really design the programs, because otherwise you limit it too much. So we have seen that our students appreciate the unexpectedness embedded in our challenges very much. So they don't know exactly, and we don't know exactly what happens when a third party, an external stakeholder is involved, which is the very value that we give to our students. So quality assurance, in my opinion, should consider that this kind of unexpectedness generates a lot of innovation also in the teaching activities, and it's very much appreciated. Otherwise, we just replicate something which students already get in their regular degrees, and this, from the perspective of the School of Innovation, is not what we want. And this needs, of course, whatever we do needs to be consistent with the quality assurance regulations and formalizations. So there needs to be a match between these two different needs.
Thank you. It's very nice to see that the institutions and quality assurance agency are so friendly next to each other and answer questions. So there's no fight yet. And I think it's very good that we contain the enhancement-led perspective if we have this kind of new format, because QA, of course, is often seen as a burden or something that hinders development. But in a sense, it can also help to think in certain frameworks. So if you look at a framework, for example, for the Certificate for Quality of Internationalization, it's about what is quality of internationalization, what aspects have to be taken in mind. And so if you don't see it as a framework that will punish you or control you, you can also see it as a methodology that helps to develop and that already has been thinking about certain aspects that have to be taken into consideration, the same as the framework here. So it can be a positive thing as well, and as you see, you can sit friendly side by side, so that's very good. So for the other three panel members, I also have a question, and so of course it's concentrated on the Erasmus+, what would you think? So how can the next Erasmus+ program better balance innovation with, as said before, simplicity? Maintaining quality expectations while reducing complexity for institutions and students. Fanny, maybe we can start with you.
I will be frank. We have not yet started the discussion on these specific points. It will come, but yes, we are discussing other aspects of the program. What is clear is that we want to continue this mobility format, as we have seen that it meets some needs, and it seems to be very much appreciated. So we have seen this strong uptake over the years. We have already made some adjustment because at the beginning it was a bit, there was a slow start. For example, we have reduced the minimum number of external participants from 15 to 10. And just after this change, we have really seen a very, very good uptake, especially among European university alliances. As we have not been very prescriptive, I think we have let the HIs innovate. Shall we in the future correct some abuses? It's a bit too early to tell. Maybe it's up to you to tell us. But I just would like to recall that if we have put this minimum number of ECTS to 3, it means that 5 days of physical activity cannot count for 3 ECTS. It's only 1. So it means that the virtual component should be substantial. So it could not be just 15 minutes icebreaker talking about logistical aspect of the physical mobility. It is much more than that. And I have visited 3 different blended intensive programs organized here in Belgium from at least 2 different European university alliances. I must say I was impressed by the variety of how it was organized, the quality. I mean, I really wanted to be part of it because yes, it was impressive. I mean, it was different from what I have seen when I was a student. Okay, I have not been a student. It's a long time since I have been a student, but I was really impressed. And just to mention, it was for one specific alliance. It was Civis. They organized it for the first-year student, second semester of first year, and it was so they gave during the second semester some online. They organized it once a week. It was more sort of collaboration online, so they asked the students from the different universities to build some transnational teams. And then when they met, they organized also cultural activities, laboratory work, because it was for biological students, but also very nice activities. And I think the students were convinced that it was not so difficult to go on mobility. It was not a big obstacle, for example, for some of them to collaborate only in English, because most of them came from Latin countries. And so from time to time, Spanish, French, Italian were also used. So yes, there are many different things, and I have seen another BIP from Circle U, and it was about entrepreneurship, and it was really interesting because it was really interdisciplinary, from students coming from medicine, management, different kind of disciplines, and they had to pitch their project in front of a jury after the 5 days of mobility. They were really focused when I arrived to take some pictures of them. They were really focused, involved. It was really nice. And we have seen also it was a way to do internationalization at home, because lots of students from Mons University could also participate.
Thank you very much. I think the community of expertise can be filled up with all these ideas that have already been launched. Lars, you are also very well invited, because if the Bible of SBM will be written, you will be part of it, I think. So, okay, thank you very much for all the good examples and not being too restrictive, so making it as an experimental room as it should be, so things can further evolve. Božidar.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me start saying that the numbers of short blended mobilities have been rising noticeably in the recent years, which proves that it is a very attractive activity and it works. But of course, there's some space for improvement. Also, what we notice in Slovenia is that every 5th participant would decide to go for long-term mobility after the short blended mobility. But there are also now many cases of reoccurring students, so meaning that they would want to go on short blended mobility not once, not twice, but like maybe 5 times. So the first question here is also for the future program: should there be a limitation on how many times can students attend the short blended mobilities? We have cases where some institutions have already made autonomous decision to limit. But then there are also complaints coming from students, because of course there are some who want to go more times. Also, what I would like to say is, for sure there is a room for improvement on digital tools to support the implementation of these activities. Here I have in mind the Erasmus Without Paper, and the new upcoming feature of student nominations, which will, I guess, lessen the burden, administrative burden for the institutions, or at least there's a potential for that. Also, the online learning agreement can be improved, but most importantly, the possibility to exchange the data between Erasmus Without Paper dashboard and beneficiary model, so the program tool that institutions need to use to report the activities. But even beyond these things, I think the digital solutions can offer so much. So for example, like the application processes, the list of all available BIPs from the institutions from which the students can easily choose from that are applicable for his studies. So, you know, all of these kind of things that can be really done digitally and make it easier for institutions, but most importantly for the students. There should also be higher organizational support for organization of blended intensive programs in order to support the necessary input and innovation from the teacher, so the pedagogy perspective, in order to kind of, you know, not only rely on those proactive teachers, but also to kind of maybe motivate those who are not so keen with this kind of support. And to connect with what Fanny mentioned, in my modest opinion, there should be a prescribed minimum expected number of ECTS for the virtual part of the activity. And I'll finish with that.
Thanks a lot for your thoughts and all interesting points. And maybe we also have to think of a program that can be fully made up of BIPs. Maybe that's also an inspiration, but maybe that's too much of the good thing. So, and now student perspective, Simone.
I will try to be brief this time. I will try to do my best. First of all, I think that is important, maybe even sometimes we take it for under granted, but of course, if we want to have a program that can match innovation and simplicity, is first of all important to take into consideration when developing the new program the needs of students and the higher education institutions, which are the ones that are implementing them. I think there are also some of the initiatives that were developed throughout this project that could serve also as basis for the next program. And I'm, for example, thinking about the quality framework that has been developed. Having such a framework is important also, especially when we think about European level, to make quality actually an integral part of blended intensive program. Some areas for improvement is, of course, recognition of this mobility experience, and as well as I think it's important also to create capacity within higher education institutions, especially I'm thinking more about the academic part. And in the virtual context is more difficult also because blended intensive program has also this capacity of innovating teaching and learning, which I hope it's going to be recognized even more in the upcoming next in the next program. And here we have really we need to create skills and support academics to develop these innovative courses, innovative blended intensive program. Something that is also important is to develop blended mobility within long-term cooperation ecosystem. European University Alliance are an example, network of university, but in general, in context of international cooperation, I think it's important not to limit these just European University Alliances, and maybe we'll see in the future also alliances working together on BIPs and not necessarily within the same alliance, because at the end also the objective is to have a spillover. Maybe we'll see alliances and non-alliances university cooperating in a blended intensive program. And something really that I would like to mention is this innovative aspect. The blended intensive program and blended mobility can be a way, for example, to foster lifelong learning. And this is also based on my experience. I attended BIPs where maybe people from the labor market and students were working together in a challenge-based approach, involving externals, including the labor market, in light of the union skills, is really important. And also because we know that sometimes non-mobile students expect delays in finding a job compared to their non-mobile peers, even though in the long term they have benefits. And also something which is really important is the interdisciplinarity approach that also these BIPs can have, because we actually have the opportunity to merge students and professionals from different backgrounds working together on the same challenges, which what society needs.
Thank you very much. I would say that there are as many ideas today as there were raindrops yesterday, so that's very good. So thank you very much for all of this input. I think that's a lot of food for thought that we can continue the discussions and also the development and the creativity within the alliances, within institutions, and that people will get the opportunity to develop it. I still have 10 minutes, I see. So the 10 minutes will be used to ask the audience if there are any questions. I will first ask here, and then I will go to the Slido. Anyone here? Yes.
Hello, good afternoon already. Wannes Gijsels from the University of Antwerp, Belgium. I'm wondering about the quality of, so we're addressing obviously the quality of the virtual phase and also the integration of the virtual phase and the physical phase. But what hasn't been discussed yet is the quality of the physical phase as such. What would your opinion be about that, based on the experiences we have with organizing summer schools, for instance? It's not the same either. So if you really want to have students develop intercultural competences during their short mobility, also, for instance, the informal learning should be addressed a bit more deliberately by organizing activities outside of the classroom and so on. Also not to overpack, for instance, the physical phase, which is something professors tend to do out of enthusiasm, I would say. So what would your stance be about the quality of the physical phase apart from the virtual phase? Thank you.
Anyone from the panel?
So if you want, I can go. I think that I completely agree with most of what you mentioned. I think that also what is important is to consider the length. I know that unfortunately, maybe I do understand the pros and the cons, and especially when we are speaking about specific program. But if we want also to give this more social component, and we want really to value the physical part, we should also think if maybe 5 days is enough. We know that a lot of time for a mobility to be impactful, we need a minimum of, from some literature review, 10, 20 days. Of course, this comes with pros and cons. This also maybe think about the fact that those 20 days maybe should not be together. Maybe we can have a first mobility of 10 days and maybe a second mobility of 10 days. Of course, considering also the cost that this would include, because students would have to move more than once. So of course, even though I do understand the importance of the physical part, I also understand the consequences of it. And I think it's important really to, and this is in general, it applies to blended mobility, but also to longer mobility experience, to recognize and to value this part. And this value should come firstly by the academics. When we do a mobility, but in general, learning is not just about hard skills, but we are learning all a set of soft skills, which are still relevant in the learning pathway of learners. And we should not think about just about the academic program and the formal education, but really valuing the non-formal and informal education and what this can bring to them and to us.
If
If I may add one point, we always organize extra activities during the 5 days, but we don't want to exaggerate. So we give hints to them as to what they can do in their free time, and if they prolong their stay for one or 2 or 3 more days, then it's fine, but we don't accompany them throughout those experiences, because there is a risk embedded here. We have a number of students which we call serial applicants, which we find regularly in the semesters, who come for sure for the blended intensive program and so on, but also just to have a holiday or something like that. So they go in there. So we need to identify them, because this is not the purpose of, at least in our case, the purpose of the blended intensive program. So it comes with the program, but it's not the center. So we need to check for that.
If I may also add.
Yeah, of course.
I completely agree with what you mentioned, but I think we are focusing on a virtual component so much more because it's so much weaker, at least from the evidence. Because the physical one already kind of by itself offers the environment where these intercultural competences would be more developed, or would need lesser support to develop them, faster. Where in the virtual part, there's still a lot of room for improvement. And if the staff is aware of the importance of that in the virtual component, they will be also aware about that in the physical one. So it kind of goes hand in hand, I would say, as well. But yeah, one battle at a time.
I think my question is mostly directed to you, but also to Fanny, because you both agreed that making the online part more important and maybe connecting credits to it. I think that was your. So my question is, and I fully support that, absolutely. But how can you make people accountable? Is there a way in which you could do a quality check on that specific part? Yeah, I think that would be my question, if that's possible to answer.
I think it is always possible to do some audits, some monitoring, and to ask for proof. And then if you see nothing, there might be a problem, So we have heard that some virtual components were really reduced to the minimal, and for us it's not acceptable. So it's really the role of the national agencies and the quality assurance agency to check. And yes, we count on the monitoring. And for the next programming period, we would like to reinforce the monitoring, not only on BIPs, but in general. Because, sometimes we hear some abuses. And as you know, we will not have the double of the funding for the next programming period, unfortunately. So we have to really give money to what is worth having some European money. We have to reflect also to have this in mind, because otherwise we really face the risk that the program will be highly criticized as being, for the happy few, and it's not what we want.
And if I can add also, I think there already exists some tools where we can check that. So for example, we do like monitoring visits where we focus on quality of implementation of Erasmus+. So this is one of the things. The other thing is in the final reports, the beneficiaries have to describe the virtual component, what was done. So, with the ECTS, I think it's quite clear how many hours, what kind of activities should there be, what kind of learning outcomes are there expected, to kind of connect whether it reflects the number of ECTS they assigned to. Also, there's the system checks that we do, where we check the documentation and stuff like that in institutions. So there are quite few already existing mechanisms where we could check that, but we should have it first in the rules to kind of push institutions into that direction. And I believe once it's there, they start, implementing it anyway. So.
Just to echo from the quality agency's perspective that yes, this is why the reason why the internal quality assurance systems must incorporate also these quality criteria for blended and online learning, so the quality check can be done beforehand and feedback given to the teaching staff and improvements made. So that's why, because the quality criteria are there.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you. So Karen Triquet from the VUB, but with my Utopia Higher Education Alliance hat on my head. In Utopia, we have quite, I would say, a unique educational model in that we work bottom up with staff to develop actually challenge-based learning. And we have seen, of course, that the BIPs, sorry to bring the BIPs up again, the BIPs are, of course, a very interesting tool for them because, of course, it gives them that opportunity to build it into their courses. So we work by embedding in the courses, so we bypass a bit this recognition challenge because it's embedded in the course. And of course, we have the mentorship because these are professors in the courses giving the BIP. As well as the online and blended component is a bit controlled with that factor. But my question, therefore, to the panel is, and I heard it earlier, recognition. We were speaking a lot about recognition for students. And do you see interesting incentives for educators who have so much on their plate? And also maybe to not to bypass the administrative weight, but ways you've seen that this is approached maybe in alliances or more generally to support educators to take up this innovation, not just through training, but really considering that their workload is immense. What we ask of them is immense, and how can we better support them to scale it, actually. So I would be very interested to hear. Thank you.
There are some BIPs for staff. We have encouraged BIP for staff to train the staff to organize BIPs, for example. So we have seen this in some alliances. So it would be my first answer, but maybe some colleagues...
We have what we call a community of practice, in which we spread the voice about generating or restructuring professors' courses in terms of challenge-based learning in order for them to be eligible to participate in ECIU activities. So we are going in that direction. It's very difficult because we are trying to, so the idea is that you try to instill an incentive to someone who can be resistant to it, typically older professors. So the people who join voluntarily in those practices are already self-selected, but still it's a reference point for those people who can really and to promote this kind of activities or do that in first person. Yeah.
If I may also add, I think there are some points that are actually similar for students and professors. For example, the sharing the knowledge. I think that most of educators still are not really aware of the possibility of developing BIPs or even are aware of the European University Alliance itself. I'm an Utopia student myself, so I know a bit the alliance, but I think it's also important to create capacity, because how to structure a BIP, how to implement, also to work with this innovative ecosystem, I think is really important, and the alliance can serve as a place where this capacity can be created, also sharing among professors and educators from the different universities that maybe have already implemented it. And of course, I think it's also important when it comes to the monitoring and understanding, receiving the feedback after the implementation to see what can be adjusted or which were the challenges that the educator faced so that can be implemented, or maybe other professors can be aware of these problems that others had encountered.
It's very nice to introduce the idea of meta-BIPs. So now we have the BIPs, but now we also have the meta-BIPs.
Yeah, sorry, I have a lot of opinions. No, but what I would want to share also is we did this wonderful exercise actually with ACA and 5 other NAs on strategic approach to staff mobility. But it goes beyond that. It goes, strategic approach to internationalization of staff as well. So in that sense, you can also look at your question from that perspective. So, and I think some institutions developed wonderful action plans, how they are approaching internationalization activities of staff from more like a professional development point of view. One of the universities even are creating their, or Alliance actually, is creating their own credit points for staff. And this can be wider, not just for the mobility, but also for activities as such, like organizing a BIP or, involving intercultural parts into their courses and what that brings to their professional development. So yeah, there's a lot of space for this kind of development.
One question still, or? Yeah.
You already moved further. I had an opinion to one step back, but I rather do it later when I'm on stage. It's about the question how to check for the quality. As an alliance in Civis, we work with a project call. So program coordinators and their teams come up with an application, and there we ask for all those questions, workload related with ECTS. And of course, we take into account also the virtual part, not only the physical part. So the same goes about methodologies for online teaching, for physical mobility, or the physical part, but also we ask for the learning outcomes. But you're right, in the end, you need a circle and check at the end what happened in real life. But as Alliance, if you organize it in that way, you have a chance to ask for all those information ahead before the BIP itself would take place.
Okay. But you can continue afterwards. You will have the floor this afternoon. So I've been a bad boy, because in a blended system you also have to look at the questions from the audience that is in the virtual world. But I didn't mention them because the first one also relates to what Eva was asking. So what basic standards of online interaction and guidance should every blended mobility course guarantee to support student engagement? So that's where something that has to be defined and discussed still. So that's good. And of course, there's also an Erasmus Plus question, but you said, yeah, you're still thinking about it. But how will the next Erasmus Plus program help ensure clearer and more consistent recognition of blended mobility? So I don't think there's an answer yet, but maybe you can take the question home and have an answer in several weeks, months, and hopefully not years. I think we have to quit here. Everybody will be hungry, both in the virtual world and here. Thank you very much to the panel. You did a marvelous job, and I think there's a lot of food for thought. There are some answers. There's still continuous thought that can be in the minds of everybody. Thank you very much, and I would like to appreciate all the work of the people in internationalization. As long as we do the effort to have this kind of interaction with people from other countries, with people from other parts of the world, that is very important, because we are in a post-truth area and unfortunately not in a post-Trump area. So keep the good work going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dagmar already said it. We're going into our lunch break. Thank you for our online audience for staying with us throughout this very interesting discussion. So we will resume the conference at 1:45. Enjoy your lunch, take a break, and see you in a little bit. Bye.